Big changes for Pride Fort Lauderdale, including resignation of Executive Director Kevin Clevenger. South Florida Gay News broke the news yesterday, written by John Hayden, evaluating the Pride of America's events for February. His reporting suggested that there are financial and other crisis issues, as described in the article, that are requiring significant changes to the event just weeks before it was planned to take place. Documents that were obtained by SFGN show the event, which is run by Pride Fort Lauderdale and replaces the usual Pride Fort Lauderdale event this year, has been behind schedule for months. The deteriorating situation began reaching critical mass on December 19th. Just days before Christmas, the City of Fort Lauderdale stepped in and offered to provide a move off of the planned Fort Lauderdale Beach location to Olas's Intracoastal Promenade Park as a cost-saving measure. The Pride Board voted to accept that offer last week. Pride Executive Director Kevin Clevenger reportedly had suggested for weeks that he may resign. In an emergency meeting last week, Clevenger actually tendered his resignation. Sources on the Pride Board say that he will now have limited duties dealing only with sponsors and other support-like functions of Pride of the Americas. The SFGN story also reports on the change of the three-day beach festival to only Saturday on the beach, with Friday night a party in Wilton Manors and Sunday a pool party. Kitty Meow, the entertainment chairman of Pride and longtime host at Hotspots Magazine Happening Out television network, has also resigned. While longtime Pride president Mike Martorell had previously temporarily resigned, he returned to his position and will now be the leader of what's next for Pride Fort Lauderdale. To help us all understand the story, the SFGN community editor and reporter of this breaking news story, John Hayden, is with us tonight to discuss the ongoing issues of the Pride of the Americas and the future of Pride Fort Lauderdale. The LGBTQ plus community has supported this event through 3 years of delays because of pandemic. John, welcome to Queer News Tonight.
Good evening, Al. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
And to you. Well, first, your story was quite in depth about the issues of what's happening at Pride of Americas. Why don't you kind of summarize for us your story that I imagine is going to publish this week in SFGN. It's on digital online now, but kind of summarize what you found, you learned.
Well, you know, it's confirming and getting documentation of things that have been whispered around the community for several months now. I've got two very key documents, the minutes from their regular December 19th board meeting and their memo that was circulated by a contractor. It was that was evaluating the situation. That was back on November 2nd, about 100 days before Pride was supposed to start. And I would say the contractor was being surly, but he was really just calling out in a very unambiguous, I don't care whose feelings I hurt type of way. In this memo, he called them the timeline that they had set out for themselves with 100 days to go. He calls it insane. And when you think about it, it absolutely is. There was no plan for where things were going to go. He noted that the people that are hired by Pride Board and their staff have not been using the experts that they're bringing in to help launch this, what he called a monster. And it is a monster event to try and get off, especially when you're trying to market it to the entire hemisphere. It's just damning. And what's even worse is, for Pride, is that he calls them out for their petty and personal grudges. That's a quote from the memo, from an outsider to the Pride Board. It's absolutely amazing what's in there. Then on December 19th, they had their board meeting. Rumors of resignation, although they weren't recorded in the minutes, were in there. But even there, they're saying, we still don't have a map. We still don't have this. We still don't have everything locked down for the way it's going to look. And then that map would have been rendered useless because then they decided to move away from South Beach, or not South Beach, South Fort Lauderdale Beach. To give people some context of where that is, it's down at the very far end of the beach where previous prides have been, but also like where Tortuga Music festival takes place. So this is a place that is designed to hold large events, large activations, and 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people. This new park is not designed for that. Then on December 22nd, there was essentially what could only be called a come to Jesus meeting with the city, Visit Lauderdale, and Pride board representatives that I know of being in there. And they just basically said, okay, the city said, we will give you this park for free. Now, of course, they still have to spend $250,000 on the build-up and all that, but the space itself is now going to be free, which is a huge savings. There's also rumors to be discussions with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department about donating their services, which would be a huge cost saving, or at least a discount. Now, people I've talked with off the record, I can't name the names, but several people are saying they haven't heard about it, and this is on the Fort Lauderdale police side of the discussion. So,
John,
there's so much in the air right now.
I want to ask about that specific question. Of course, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out produces the Stonewall Pride Festival in full disclosure in June. The issue when reading your article talks about the Fort Lauderdale Police Department in terms of providing services for free. In your investigation of that, is the police department, are you aware of them participating in providing services or not providing services?
They're going to provide services. That's just a given. The question is, how much is it going to cost? And I believe there are Fort Lauderdale City Commissioners who are working with the police department and trying to sort of be almost an intermediary with the union and the groups that organize the police for their overtime. Because remember, it's all overtime. This isn't police just on their regular beats hanging around. They're hiring, in addition to a regular security company, they're also hiring police at overtime rates to make sure everything stays safe. And honestly, that's the key thing, and that's one of the cost things that has gone up. As you mentioned about Pride or Stonewall last year, security costs doubled for police, and that's because there's so many outside threats.
But isn't that something that's usually in place way before 100 days? And we're less than 100 days away for this thing.
Yeah, we are at about 40 days away from it now. And yes, those things should be in place. But
is Boy George still going to be there?
Boy George is still going to be here. I've had
then I'll be
people on
there.
both sides of this come to me and say, yes, Boy George has been paid. He is, ready to come with his entourage. Unfortunately, John Moss won't be coming, so there won't probably be like any fire set under bathroom doors. But other than that, it'll still be good.
That's a funny joke.
But,
go ahead.
No, but can they pull this off? Okay,
Well,
I just said less than 100 days. It's true.
It's
It's
40
not.
days.
It's 40-something days.
I mean, didn't somebody wander the desert 40 days and 40 nights?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, the
Mike,
Board of
the
Pride.
president. I want to come to Mike in just a moment. One other thing that I'm curious about. I know you've spent countless hours in the investigation of the story and all of the interviews and the back channels of gathering the information. Have any news in terms of what you think is going to happen for the parade on that Saturday?
I'm told the parade is still going to happen. In the December 19th minutes that I got a hold of, it was suggested that they scrap the parade and scrap the planned 5K. The 5K is now gone. It is off the schedule. But the parade is still going to happen down A1A, which is the closest any of this is actually going to get to the beach, because the new park is removed a block or two off of the beach. But yes, the parade is still on schedule to happen. But I mean, at this point, it's really a go with the flow, but they seem intent on keeping the parade happening.
And we open the conversation now to the specific point that you raised. What do we think about what's happening here in?
I mean, just like that contractor said, insane. Like I haven't been that close to organizing something to this capacity, right? But it is like right around the corner, and these things aren't set in place. It's almost scary, for them to be able to pull this off. Now, I consider Kevin Clevenger a friend of mine, and I consider him a friend to the community. All right, he's dedicated himself to just representing us in whatever way possible. If he felt for whatever reason that he could not be part of this pride any longer, he's got to have his reasonings for it. I do believe that he will pop up somewhere else, again dedicated to our community, doing the best he can. Is the timing off? For sure. This, like I said, it's scary times, and I've been looking forward to this thing for 3 years.
Even prior to this has had had a stain on it from the get-go, from my hearing. And I'm talking hearsay here. But when you hear enough from enough people, and people who are on the inside in the meetings, then you think, okay, this is not the first Pride that has been done in this area. Yes, it's a bigger, grander scale because it's of the Americas, but these people, many people in power, in these positions of power, in these organizations, know how this goes, know what the timing needs to be, know how far in advance things need to be planned. So it's just very odd how it's such a mess.
Dale, can I jump in there for a second?
Sure.
They really don't know how much is involved and what is going on. Some of the November 2nd memo states that the contractor says the Pride board and staff has less experience combined than the people who are supposed to come in here and do this. And Al, you mentioned in when you were doing the story intro that there would be a swimming pool party on Sunday. And that's not confirmed yet because they're just saying we hope to have something somewhere because they want to honor a 3-day party that they've promised to sponsors and I believe ticket holders. I mean, people have been buying tickets to this. Whether it becomes Firefest and never happens remains to be seen, which I don't think is going to happen because there are too many big name sponsors who have poured tens, if not hundreds of $1,000s a piece into this. So I think something's going to happen, but it's not going to be grand. It's going to be smaller than it was supposed to be.
You speak to him? Did you get a comment from Mike?
Mike does not want to talk about what's happening right now. He did eventually get back to me after I had already submitted copy. He did get back saying that when it was appropriate, he would talk with me. But right now, no one from the board is going on the record.
But John, my point was really about, people like Mike have been involved in creating Pride festivals for many, many, many years. So and not just to call him out, because I think he's great, but there are other people who have been involved in creating these events for many years. So how is it and you may not have the answer to this, how is it these people don't know what's going on? I find it very odd. I was thinking about when I heard this latest incarnation of this mess, I was thinking about Miami Beach Pride, and because there was a huge shakedown in Miami Beach Pride last year. And the organization still managed to pull off in just a few months a Pride that happened in September of 2020. My years are getting screwed up. What year?
21.
2020.
Oh.
2020?
No, 21.
21, yes, thank you. Ooh. And then 7 months later, in April, another huge one. And mind you, they had lost well into the hundreds of thousands, close to $200,000. And that's known fact. And they came back and managed to pull off those two very close together and make money and make a success. So it's possible to make these things happen. So I'm wondering then, how is this organization becoming such a disaster?
Well, in many ways, the organizational chaos, as a civil mediator, organizational chaos a lot of times come from lack of communication.
They should have hired you, Bobby. They should have hired you to fix that.
Well, I'm available. So, but lack of communication, lack of clear communication. Sometimes and a clash of personality, most likely. I mean, as John has mentioned, a lot. The memo includes literally people were talking about differing personalities, and sometimes we need to put our personal differences aside. I don't care if, party A thinks party B is a bitch or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You need to guide them towards a common goal. And that's where facilitation.
And leave your ego at the door and make this Pride happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the big issues now. John drops this bombshell on the community in terms of the story. And it seems to me exactly the purpose of South Florida Gay News, by the way, and having some independent reporting and responsibility in community. I think the big issue now is, I heard several months ago that one of the streaming channels were going to broadcast the parade. I don't know if you heard that, and
you told me that.
And the management group at Hotspots Happening Out was told that. I don't believe that came to any fruition. The most important thing now is that it happens. Pride of America has been slated for 3 years. Pandemic was no one's responsibility. Nobody can be held responsible for the pandemic, but we had Pride Fort Lauderdale last year in November. We broadcast the parade. along with Tony and Kitty Meow, who has resigned, and I'm very sad to hear Kitty's resignation as entertainment director.
Over health issues.
Over health issues, yes. And we're in a situation where I have confidence in Mike Martorell. He has
absolutely.
lots of experience, and if somebody can help pull it back together for the next 40 days, I think Mike is the right person.
Agreed.
And really, that at the end of the day, I think is the only thing that's important. We're living in the gayest place on planet Earth. And so our pride, especially when we slap "of the Americas" on its label, we have an obligation to follow through. And I'm sure that the Pride Board and the committee, and especially Mike, will take that obligation seriously. Any final thoughts, John, in terms of your reporting? Your follow-up is going to be any current plans?
Who are you stalking?
I'm not stalking anyone. However, I am putting offers out there to talk to people who are into it. And I think there certainly are a lot more threads to be pulled at this story, and there will certainly be more over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks as we lead up to it, and for sure a few afterwards. You know, one thing I'd like to point out is just the history, what we've seen over the last few months. Last year, Pride had their Pride on Smart Ride weekend, and that was, you know, a huge deal. They had to do it to sponsor. They didn't have to have it that weekend. They chose to have it that weekend, but they had to have a Pride last year to satisfy sponsorship agreements, or else they would have had to return hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they've just kind of been floating to keep their head above water. The same with their when they had their Halloween party opposite the National Task Force Gala the same night back in October. They're just having these things because they have to raise money, they have to meet sponsorships, and so basically everything they've been doing is just to kind of keep their head afloat so they don't even have to give back money. To not lose money on those events is kind of a victory at this point. And to give you a little idea of what it's like to move venues like this, even though you're really only moving about a mile, that would be like the Smart Ride on October 1st deciding, okay, all the plans we have and the infrastructure we have set up between here and Key West, we're going to move it, and now we're going to hold the Smart Ride from Miami across Alligator Alley over to Naples. That's essentially what it is. It's that major of a change to move from one place to the other when you have no infrastructure, no history at that location. Your contractors are going to be caught off guard. It's going to be a really heavy lift and a long 40 days for Mike and the rest of the board and the volunteers.
John, can I commend you also on the story? It was really thought through. I was expecting like a bash fest, I'm sorry, and it was not the case at all. You know, you really covered all the bases, things that a lot of us didn't even know were happening. So I really do appreciate you as a journalist and as a friend.
Thank you, Faye.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue to follow it. One of the things I know the entire LGBTQ community, especially in Broward County, but all over South Florida, are going to do now is we've got to come together and make sure that this happens and is a success. And all of us are committed to making sure that happens. John Hayden, community editor of South Florida Gay News, thank you for being with us tonight at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you, Al.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.